Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where we review anything and everything. And today we're getting into the movie review of Spider-Man Brand New Day. I already reviewed this figure on the channel, so you guys can check that out. I'll put the link in the description for that, you guys. Obviously you guys know that we review all types of things in here, but since I was able to happen to see the movie today, which is actually the 30th, figured I'd do a little review on it and just tell you guys my thoughts. So first off, I want to say that if you go to see it, I don't know how long this lasts, but you're able to get a card that comes with it. Hopefully you guys are able to see that pretty well. And then a poster. I don't know how well that's appearing on camera as well, you guys. Hopefully you guys can see that pretty well. I know the lighting is a bit much. Let me try to get it to where the lighting's not so bad. All right, so that comes with it as well. So yeah, this is the second time actually I got some stuff that came with it, because I watched I did a review on and watched The Mandalorian Grogu, so which I reviewed on the channel. So anyway, first I'm gonna just get into things from a non-spoiler perspective, and I'll tell you when I'm gonna get into more details, which kind of goes into like spoilers. So as far as the movie, I actually think the movie was pretty good. I haven't been a fan of a lot of the movies after the Endgame series, but as far as this movie in particular, I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought it was done pretty well. There is a bit of a lot going on. It feels like there's a lot of cameos, a lot of things just moving, a lot of moving parts that makes the story a little bit like you enjoy it, almost like a summer blockbuster, but like, and you'll still remember it later on because it's part of the MCU, but at the same time too, a lot of those moving parts that kind of fill up the movie don't necessarily feel like they needed to be there for the story, and because of that, I feel like they're going to be elements that you don't really care that much for later on or have that much memory in regards to. Like, you're not going to be thinking, when you think back to it, like, oh, remember that moment, or remember, you know, these characters. It's not going to stick with you like that heavy. Yeah, so some of the characters, just to mention, that are obviously, there's not spoilers, but they're in it that you've seen from the preview that I can, that lends to this concept is like Scorpion, for example. Like, he's just kind of run-of-the-mill, somebody in the background for the most part. No different than how Shocker was in the other one, or whatever the case is. I would even say that Shocker had a bigger role inside Spider-Man's first movie. So this doesn't really have that. Some of these characters have that sense of just like, they're there. You might think they're gonna have a bigger role, but they don't. I know I'm butchering how I pronounce it. Tarantula. That character is seen in the preview as well. That character has no time other than what you saw him in the preview. There's nothing more than that. I'm sorry if that comes off as a spoiler. If you were thinking they was going to be more into the movie, there are things like that that are not into the movie at all. Another one, and like, once again, sorry if this goes into considered a spoiler. It's not something that you didn't know was in the movie, but you know, Tombstone. I'm pretty sure that I've seen a trailer with Tombstone. People knew that Tombstone's inside it. If not, there is Lego sets that have Tombstone, so you know Tombstone's in it. You don't see him other than like one clip. So it was almost like they're throwing things in, and I want to say it's some of those characters, the last two characters I just mentioned, Tarantula and Tombstone, is kind of akin to when you watched what was that movie again? Suicide Squad. And you had Batman in it for that short moment, you know, where Batman was had his run-in with what's his name, Deadshot. That same length of time in that clip, and that same severity or weight of that scene, is what these characters are inside this. So there is this feel of like cameos going on that, like I said, you're not going to really remember because they didn't have any weight, even though on the surface you're thinking, oh, these characters are going to be in it. As far as the storyline goes, the storyline, like I said, was good, but there's a little bit of a twist to it where it seems cool at first, But I think once again the longevity of the film, that twist takes away from something that could have been a little bit more substantial. I'll say like the main villain could have felt a little bit more substantial if they did it differently, or if it was. So, this is, I'm not trying to spoil right now. There's going to be a segment into the video where I am. So, but I just say up front, I just feel like they could have, once you see the twist, you're going to say, okay, that's cool. Wow. You might get a little interested in kind of realizing, okay, like this is the villain of the story, blah, blah, whatever the case is. But then later on, I feel like you might almost start feeling like that villain could have been a different villain, and it could have had more weight to it. You know what I mean? It could have been something greater, something heavier, more sinister, more whatever. And I feel like that is something that, like in hindsight, like a person might look back at it and feel. But nonetheless, what they're doing in this movie is you could tell that there's a lot of bits of world building going on, not even just from future movies, timelines, but not timelines, but movies in terms of like other movies that may not be Spider-Man's movie, but they're also doing a lot of world building for Spider-Man's world. So, that actually was kind of cool that they're building up for his world, like in little ways that they can draw upon later on. That's cool. Similar to the way that, I don't remember what Scorpion's original role was inside the first movie. I forget, but I remember him, the ending cutscene, and he's like saying to Toomes, like, hey, I heard you know who Spider-Man is. For some reason, that's the only time I remember. I'm sure there was another point earlier in the movie where he gets caught, and that's how he gets locked in prison. Yes, I remember now because I saw it not that long ago. It was when he was on the Staten Island ferry. That was the scene that he comes in, small role, you don't really know who he is. All of a sudden he's locked up, and then you realize he's going to become Scorpion because of the tattoo on his neck. That type of world building is what they're doing inside here. Introducing certain characters, introducing certain things that make you feel like, okay, this is, like where they can go with it. So in that regards, that part was cool. I do think that even Punisher, for example, it was cool to see him in it, but I'll be honest with you, after seeing the movie, I really felt that his role in it was Marvel saying, everyone likes Punisher. They liked Punisher in his own series. They liked Punisher in Daredevil. Was he in anything else? He wasn't in anything else, but obviously he guest appeared in like I said, his own show in Daredevil. And then he had his own little kind of short movie that he had recently. What was it? One More Kill. But the thing about it is, I really felt that Marvel was kind of like, okay, we know you guys love Frank Castle. We know you love Punisher. We're going to throw him in here because now you're going to take this movie more seriously. And that is exactly how I felt that they did after seeing him in the movie, because you realize he's good in the movie. He's cool because he plays his role the way he plays his role. Do they soften him up a little bit? A little bit. I mean, but he's had those moments, even like in Daredevil before and this and that, where he's like, okay, a little bit. I won't say they take him away from his character, but was he the right character for that role? No, he wasn't. He should not have been inside that movie. And I say that because Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is the kind of person who is a lot more happy. You know what I mean? And then you take Punisher, who is straight up, I'm killing everybody. And you're putting them now into the same movie. That's the reason why I feel like it really is, we're trying to do fan service by bringing him in here so you guys will want to see the movie and kind of boost up the movie, because they really don't mesh together. And yes, they've come across each other in the comics. The Punisher tried to kill Spider-Man in the comics. This is not going to feel like that. Obviously, you could see from the trailers, there's a dynamic of like, hey, kid, like, what are you doing? Like, get out of my way type of vibe. And obviously, that's going to, just from the trailers, that's going to become a thing where they're kind of somewhat friendly to each other. So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you could have had a different character to play that role. Like somebody like Daredevil, for example. Maybe Daredevil would have probably stole the movie a little too much because his powers would have been similar to Spider-Man's with the whole radar sense. Who knows? But someone like Daredevil, for example, who obviously already guest appeared in the last Spider-Man movie, would have been a better fit for this, because he could have also said things like, I question maybe the way, like maybe I don't agree exactly with the way you're going to go about things, but it won't be on the level that Punisher so different than Spider-Man. Like, so there's a little bit of that I could see a lot of people getting bothered with that dynamic for Punisher. Like I said, I don't feel like they necessarily water him down because he has moments in his own show and in Daredevil where he's a little bit more, like has his friendly moments. But then right next to that in the show, he'll go kill somebody. You know what I mean? Or Daredevil has to try to stop him from killing somebody. It's never this thing where he's just like, okay, I'm friendly now, I don't want to kill people. You don't have that in there. And I feel like that's something that in this role here, a lot of people might get bothered the fact that Spider-Man obviously not going to want him to kill people, but it's not to the extent of Spider-Man's going to have to grab him by the arm and say, stop killing people. That's not what's going on. So, yeah. Now, with that being said, I think it's a good movie. I actually enjoyed it a good amount. Did they need Hulk in it? They didn't need Hulk in it either. But once again, just something that they threw in there. So you're going to feel there's a lot of that, going on. Characters just being thrown in, adding fluff. It doesn't take away from the movie, but you kind of feel like it wasn't necessary. But then on the other flip end, you could almost view it like a comic book. Sometimes comic books throw characters in it and you're like, I'm happy I saw that guy in it. But since the world is so built up, that's the other argument too. You would say, well, why wouldn't I come across some of these characters every now and then? Because the world is so built up. In the comics, you have that. A guy comes into like 2 panels and then he's gone because the world is so big, you're going to run into other people. So in that regards, maybe you could forgive it for just throwing a bunch of people in because the MCU has gotten that big where it's like, why aren't we just running into people? It would make sense to a degree. But also, too, you want it to make sense with the story. Now I'm going to get into spoilers. So spoiler alert at this point now, you guys. So giving you that heads up, I'm going to take a pause right now, give you guys a moment to escape the video because the spoilers are coming. Okay. So jumping into it, they really try to the torturous hero aspect story of this is what a major part of this, and that is Peter trying to connect with his friends and the fact that they don't know him anymore. I feel that was something that when they did that in the previous movie, I don't know how much they thought about how are they going to come back from it, because it feels like it's something that is too grand for them to just spend a couple of moments trying to figure it out. And I'm not telling you that they solve it, because they don't necessarily solve it in this one movie. It's definitely something that could trail into another movie and even another movie after that. So this is part 4. It could trail into part 5 or part 6 as well. But it feels like something that is almost like a distraction from the main story, because this is too large of a component to just be this subtle background story, unless they were to make it where he said, I'm not even going to pay attention to my friends in this one, and he goes through the whole movie without dealing with them at all, and then goes, in the 5th movie, I miss my friends. I spent a whole time in the 4th movie not seeing them. I missed them, and in the 5th movie, I'm going to try to rekindle that. What they do here is try to make years have passed from the previous movie to now. They try to make it where a couple of years have passed. Not like a lot of years, maybe been like 1 year, but they've already been in, like, his friends have been in school for at least a year. Like, they're in their next year now. I think there's a point where they're saying sophomore year of college. So they try to make it where this is the moment where he's like, I missed him too much and it's getting to me. The problem with that is that's too much weight to be dealing with these other problems going on. So as I said earlier inside the video, when it came to the villain and the main villain being something that could be this really cool kind of thing, I'm going to reference a different movie, so that's what I was thinking. I want to make sure I had that movie correct, and I don't remember the name of it, but you'll know what I'm talking about when I reference it. But so the villain here was Jean Grey. Like I said, spoilers already. It was Jean Grey was the main villain. And that's what I say is the twist of it, is because in the beginning you don't really know who that villain is. They're walking around, then they have a hood on. Eventually you find out it's Jean Grey. But she's doing this from a place of I need to, how should I say, wrongly accused. Like, she's trying to get something or attain something, and Spider-Man assumes that she's the enemy, but the DODC, Department of Damage Control, they're hiding things. They're essentially like, so her story to wrap it up in a not like, and this just came to me now, so it is perfect timing. Her story is Eleven's story for the most part in Stranger Things. The DODC is like that company that was dealing with 11, and they captured her sister, long story short. And Jean Grey has a sister, but that was something in the comics that she's not alive for long, and then whatever the case is. So, and I've seen some more stories that try to introduce her now in current comics, if people are at all familiar with current comics. But anyway, so it's like that. It's like they go to experiment on her sister. She's trying to find her sister. So think of DODC as this lying agency similar to the one from Stranger Things that tries to make it like they're innocent and they're for the good side or they're doing the right thing, when in actuality they're doing like bad things behind the scene. And when you find that out, you're like, yeah, these are really the bad guys. That's essentially what's going on here. What I meant when I said in the beginning of the video about the villain and being very much like not like it could have been done better, it could have been something different, is because when you're using Jean Grey, you already know at some point or another it's going to have to be a story of misunderstanding. She's not just going to be this person who's evil. She comes off across as this kind of nomad, pickpocketing type of vibe, type of character, similar to a Rogue was in the very first X-Men. And you know, this kind of on her own kind of rebel person, and then she starts doing this. But initially, before you know that it's her, I thought that they were going to make this the new Chameleon. You know, instead of being just shape-shifting, transfers body, a new rendition of the Chameleon, which I think would have been cool. A very spooky, dark villain. And where my mind goes to with that is the movie, I forget the name of it, but the one with Denzel Washington and the body snatcher person, the person's jumping around. What is it? Is it Fallen? Taken? Would it fall? I forget the name of it. You guys can put it in the comments, or if I remember, I'll put it in the comments. But that movie, that had a more creepy, darker tone to it. You know, it had this thing to it. You know, this demon is jumping back and forth, but it had this energy to it that was very, you know, spooky and mysterious and dark and like dreadful. That's how the tone of the movie felt in the beginning. And then once you realize who it is, you're like, okay, that's not that. This is not some mysterious dark villain that is creepy, this kind of psychotic killer kind of vibe, like, you know, like Jigsaw type of vibe. You know what I mean? That kind of very dark and scary kind of, that was the tone it had until you realize who it is. And once you realize who it is, you're like, oh, okay, that's not what this is. And that really took away from it. That took away from the mystery, and that took away from this dark sense of who it was. And that to me was like a missed opportunity to make this something so much more spookier. You know what I mean? Or when you think of like the recent The Batman movie where you had the Riddler and it's spooky and you're trying to figure out who's doing this and they're doing these crimes but no one knows who it is. It's a faceless person. This was that opportunity to do that. And I think that it would have been nice if they did it in the form of, like you said, it's maybe somebody like Chameleon, a new rendition of Chameleon or something like that. Or just some other made up enemy they would have made, but doing that. So that to me was a big ball dropped. Once again, going back into the Punisher thing. Punisher didn't need to be here. He is not, and there's the part where it kind of goes into a little bit spoilers a little bit, but like I said, you've already been warned. He is a bit more friendlier tone. Spider-Man will tell him, I don't want you killing people, but he wants to kill Jean Grey. That's his mentality. And you know, Peter Parker's like, no, don't do it. You know, whatever the case is. I feel like Spider-Man didn't have to intervene to stop Punisher from killing. Not that they really put Punisher in the scenes where he could really kill. They always kind of took him out of the scenes conveniently to where that opportunity wasn't necessarily there. But I felt that his aggression to do that should have been higher. And it wasn't, and I felt that Spider-Man should have had to intervene more to stop him. I say that because if anyone who's watched Daredevil Season 2 knows that when Daredevil was trying to get, I believe, Punisher out of that building, or I don't know if they were breaking into some place. I think it was the same scene where they're trying to get it. He's trying to get him out the building, whatever. There are times where him, or I think this was another scene where Punisher and him went to go attack a facility at the same time. I don't remember, but it was a scene where Punisher would try to shoot someone, and Daredevil would have to throw his billy club to knock, Frank's gun out of his hand or something like that. He had to stop him every moment he could from killing someone. He had to actively stop him. Spider-Man didn't have to do that. Punisher was not actively trying to kill people the way he should have been. Now, granted, he wasn't. There wasn't a bunch of different enemies to just go attack and regular people, but still, like, I just think there should have been. This is why I say Punisher wasn't meant for this. He doesn't kill anybody. He wasn't meant to be in this movie because he doesn't get a chance to kill anybody, and that's not right for Punisher. Like, I don't care what movie you have him in, he's got to kill a couple people. Even when he was with Daredevil, he killed a couple people. Daredevil understood that. He didn't like it. He still would be like, yell at him later, but he still got to kill a few people. You know what I mean? Because that's what Punisher has to do. So that's why I say he was the wrong character to put inside this. It didn't feel right because Punisher, you kind of really just put him into the movie just because you knew a lot of people love Punisher and you felt like this would get you sales tickets. That's what I felt. The Hulk really was just a cameo just to have Spider-Man do some stuff with Hulk. He also really didn't need to be in there. He only raged out because Jean Grey took over his mind, using him to get to the DODC. And that was really it. It was cool to see him there, but after you see it, you realize a couple things. One, he was definitely watered down. They give a little bit of explanation without actually explaining it. She first takes over his mind. He's got this kind of thing on him, this kind of protective inhibitor. And that's how he's able to go to teach at the college, whatever the case is. She takes that off of him, and then she controls him. They don't show you when she takes it off him, but he's in the building, in the DODC building. So when Spider-Man is coming there to help the director there and whatnot, because he got this kind of almost like police radar type of thing that monitors things that are going on. Excuse me. So the Hulk ends up being controlled by Jean Grey after she takes the inhibitor off. Like I said, you don't see that scene, but Hulk's there already, and so Spider-Man comes to the building. You hear some loud sounds going on. She later on, Jean Grey tells him in the inhabiting someone else's body, like you're gonna have to deal with that guy for the most part, and without saying it in that exact way. But so when he goes to address the Hulk, and he's trying to convince him, hey, blah blah, calm down, don't let this take over you. She's controlling him as Professor Hulk. So any hit that he's doing to Spider-Man, yes, is toned down. He still should be on the level of doing severe damage to Spider-Man. So in that regards, even though he's Professor Hulk, he still should be doing massive damage. But at a certain point, Jean Grey loses control of him, and then all of a sudden, he now becomes Savage Hulk. And at that point, she can't control him anymore, but now he's going on a rampage. At that point, you really see that Hulk being he's doing some nice, cool things, but you definitely see that his strength levels should have destroyed Spider-Man like that, and it's not happening. And that's where you start to kind of see, like, okay, like, it was cool to see him there, but once again, similar to the Punisher, he shouldn't have been here because the level of destruction that he should have been at definitely toned him down. And Spider-Man should not have been able to kind of even go toe-to-toe with him at all. Granted, it ends up wearing off, not so much because the control's not on him anymore, so Spider-Man's able to kind of talk him down a little bit, telling him, like, I'm your friend. So Spider-Man doesn't win, he's losing, and eventually he's like, I'm your friend, and the Hulk kind of realizes, okay, like, this is my friend, and he starts kind of realizing, like, he feels bad. It's kind of one of those kind of scenes. But once again, nice to see, but you really didn't need him in there. He's not the guy who should have been in there, and I just say that because it's one of those kind of cameo. Let's throw him in there, like a comic book cameo. Let's throw him in there. Okay, now he's out of there. And I'm not going to go through everything inside the movie, but I'm just pointing out points that I felt like critiquing in terms of like what could be there, didn't need to be there. So Spider-Man originally approaches Bruce Banner because he wants to learn about that same inhibitor chip inhibitor gauntlet that Bruce Banner's wearing. He ends up making one of those for himself. He puts on the back of his neck, whatever the case is, and that's how he kind of, stops his transformation because he's mutating as well. And they've had stuff like that in the comics and the old cartoon back in the other days. You could see that inhibitor chip being something that later they don't say this specifically, but they do hint at that could be dangerous, taking away people's powers, like that's messing with DNA and blah blah, and that could be very restrictive, blah blah. You feel like it's almost hinting at the idea of the mutant restrictive collars that they used to have on the animated cartoon. So I do feel that that's something you might go into later on, but nonetheless, yes, everything gets resolved. It's a fun movie. On a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, I would give it like maybe a 6.5. Like, it's fun to watch. There's nothing about it that's bad, but it's not great. Marvel used to be like the MCU used to be before Endgame used to be where like a lot of their movies was like 7, 8, 9. Like they were great. After Endgame, a lot of their stuff was like slop. In my opinion, a lot of it was like 3s. Maybe 3.5, maybe 4 if you're lucky. But this to me was a solid 6.5. I thought it was good. It was definitely fun to watch. It was cool. There's a lot of door opening going on. Introducing mutants for the first time. They didn't really say it like that. They didn't use the word mutants, but definitely introducing them. She's the only one they really introduced other than her sister. Oh, another cameo that they had in it too was Elena, the new Black Widow. More as like a reference point of Spider-Man's connection to the Avengers. They didn't say like, hey, like he's an Avenger, but it was like she was kind of referencing, hey, like he's like, I need some information, and she was almost like his person in the chair. You know what I mean? In regards to like say someone like Oracle or whatever the case is, that person who sits back and gives you information. Not that that's her role, but in this movie that was her role for him, and she kind of just referenced like we do big jobs, so I'll help you with this in terms of just some information, but I'm an Avenger now. We do big jobs. Like, as if he's not an Avenger. Technically, he kind of is an Avenger. He is, because Tony Stark made him Avenger when he went into space. But with that, if I'm not mistaken in my memory, but with that being said, like, this tried to make it like, him getting called from Avenger, almost like, but not in that same sense of how Tony Stark was, where Tony Stark was like, I'm officially an Avenger. This was more like a, hey, I'm one of the big dogs now, but we all know you're not. You're part of the new Avengers. You're part of the what was it called? Thunderbolts. You're not on the same league. So it was kind of funny, but at the same time too, it was kind of like, once again, another cameo that I wouldn't say really needed to be there. She gave him some kind of like underground black market information that he needed to kind of know, but introducing it once again, it was just a cameo thing. So a lot of cameo stuff going on inside this. It doesn't really cement mutants though in it. It was just Jean Grey. They didn't really come from a perspective of these are mutants. They don't explain that. So if you're looking for that or thinking that, no, this was more like the way they introduced the Black Panther T'Challa inside Civil War. But I felt like that was done really well. And I feel like this for Jean Grey wasn't done as well. I'm not gonna say it was horrible, but it wasn't done as well. But then again, mutants as a group has more weight than an individual like T'Challa. Like, you can slide him in there and you gave him purpose. He was coming for, political situation, and his father gets killed. The weight of introducing mutants in it you just introduced Jean Grey, but the weight of what Jean Grey represents, and this would have been anybody, not just Jean Grey. If you would have brought anybody else inside there, it could have been any other mutant, it still would have had the same weight. You're introducing mutants to the MCU for the first time. There was no talk on that. There was no talk on mutants. So like, that was something too that I feel like it didn't feel like it hurt it necessarily, it not being there, but it does. We're expecting that. So it did feel like a little bland. Like, are you guys not gonna really speak on this? Like, you just introduced mutants. No one says anything about mutants. You know what I mean? The DODC captured her sister because they said her powers could be useful as a weapon. Along with other little things they turned into weapons. So that's another thing. When you see the hand in there, another guest appearance that didn't need to be there. Apparently, Peter has been running around doing a bunch of stuff, saving the city in this year's time of the people going to school, of his friends going to school, whatnot. And what you have is, they make a reference when he's talking to the head supervisor guy of the DODC that, yeah, these the hand people that you had dealt with before, apparently they were like little kids. He references them almost to like, say, the 90s Ninja Turtles movie where the Foot Clan was like a bunch of little kids and, you know, like they were just misguided. He kind of makes that kind of almost like reference. Like, hey, these were just kids. So once we realized they were just misguided, he was like, we turned them around to help us with the DODC. So it's like they're getting everything that's a problem and revamping it to help them. They took like the Shocker's gauntlets, that's where you see that inside the movie, and they revamped it as a weapon for their own people. So they're trying, their motto is trying to revamp things that are broken and turn them into something positive. Behind the scenes of that is they're actually also experimenting on mutants, or at least Jean Grey's sister, and trying to use her as a weapon as well. But once again, it's a thing where you don't really address the mutant aspect. So you're experimenting, but you didn't say you're experimenting on mutants. You're just experimenting on her. Now, they did make reference later on that, yeah, they got weaponry to stop you, Spider-Man. They have weapons to stop everyone. They're prepared for everyone, like contingency plan. They have contingency plans to stop Spider-Man. They have contingency plans to stop pretty much like anybody. But the problem is they never say, like, we're going specifically after mutants. There's no kind of weight in that direction. So that's just my one thing when it comes to that. And who knows what's going to happen later on. The DODC, I don't even know if they were a group that was in the movies prior to this in any capacity. Not that I can remember, but at the same time, I don't know what weight they're going to have coming forth later on, because they really were just like, maybe this was just the head director. No one else knew, but he was kind of corrupt. So who knows? But that's pretty much it. So that was my viewpoint on, like I said, the movie. I definitely think it's worth seeing. So you guys go check it out. Obviously, if you're watching this and I said all the spoilers, hopefully you already seen it, because I wouldn't want you guys, getting a taste of all these spoilers at that point if you guys haven't. But if you're the type who goes to season don't care about spoilers, then hopefully you guys get to go and see the movie and enjoy it. Is that about it? Yeah, I'd say that's about it. Like I said, I do think, we're definitely going to see a lot more Punisher. I definitely feel that, because Marvel, I think they're viewing him as their ace in the sleeve right now as far as getting people's attention and all. But anyway, yeah, you guys, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video.